twist it, pull it apart, and lick it. Now you.
Given who their fathers are, who do you think would achieve the most success in their life? Bart Simpson or Chris Griffin? Share your pick in the comments.
Number 10. Failing to do a proper cutaway.
Wow, this is the craziest meal I've had since I had lunch at Tommy Sullivan's house. Very good macaroni and cheese, Mrs. Sullivan.
Thank you, Chris.
That was just awful, Chris.
Poor Chris. He can't even tell a joke properly. While having dinner with Lois and Peter, Chris sets up a classic Family Guy cutaway. Only the cutaway involves nothing but Chris complimenting a Mrs. Sullivan on her delicious macaroni and cheese. Even Peter, who is certainly not the brightest, admonishes Chris for his terrible cutaway, and Chris can only hang his head in complete and utter shame. We like it when the show gets meta like this, and we like it even more when it dissects its own comedy with this level of expertise.
He is not ready for flashbacks.
No, he is not.
They're right, Chris simply is not ready for flashbacks. Number 9, watching raccoons steal the camp food.
Hey, Dad, look. I covered my back with honey, and now the ants are taking me home.
He does the same thing at home with Velveeta and cockroaches.
Chris has always been depicted as dim-witted, but rarely before this episode had the show mined that vein in such a major way. The story begins when Peter and Chris accompany Joe, Cleveland, and their sons on a joint father-son camping trip.
Hey, Chris, you are responsible for guarding the camp while we're fishing.
You got it, Dad. You can count on me to...
Only the trip goes disastrously wrong when raccoons eat all the food. Chris had one easy job, to protect the food from raccoons, but he couldn't even do that.
Holy crap, Chris, what the hell? I put you in charge of the food.
The raccoons were here, see?
To make matters worse, he makes a flip book of the raccoons stealing the food, complete with dialogue bubbles and a canister marked food. Joe's face and unsurprised reaction says it all. Chris is unfit for camping. Or, you know, most things in life.
Somehow I'm less than surprised.
Number 8, getting robbed by his goldfish. We're not saying that taking care of a goldfish is easy, but let's be honest, it's definitely one of the easier pets out there to manage. They are typically given to children as a sort of trial run for bigger and more complex pets. So, of course Chris can't even manage a goldfish.
Oh my God, my fish is gone! And he robbed me!
In fact, he's so incompetent that he somehow manages to get robbed by his own goldfish, which seemingly hopped out of its tank, broke Chris's piggy bank, and made its great escape by breaking the window. Not too many people can say they've been robbed by a pint-sized pet, but then again, Chris Griffin is a special somebody. Number 7, getting on the Titanic.
I just had the most amazing dream. I was on a famous boat called the Gigantic.
Chris has a lot of trouble with the Titanic. For one thing, he thinks it was called the Gigantic. In his defense, it was gigantic for its time, but still, it feels like we're stretching out of pity for the kid.
Hey, Stewie! If I'm such a moron, then how did I get on a fancy boat?
Worse, he also doesn't seem to realize that it's sunk, which, you know, is a widely understood piece of history. While traveling back in time, Chris tries to prove to Stewie that he is not in fact a moron. To do so, he gets himself a spot on what he calls a fancy boat. Of course, this fancy boat is none other than the Titanic. It's literally spelled out in giant letters right below his feet. Way to prove your point there, Chris.
Chris, we've got to get off this boat. The Titanic was one of the biggest disasters in history.
Well, if you're so worried, why don't you alert the crew and save everyone?
Because, Chris, we can't alter the past. That's the first rule of dreaming.
Number 6, the toaster computer.
Well, when you're done with this, Stewie is trapped between his crib and the wall.
Help! Somebody help!
He's watching an old video.
This clip is a real reminder that the apple does not fall far from the tree. Peter realizes that he personally hasn't amounted to much, and so he decides to turn Chris into a success in order to vicariously satisfy his own youthful aspirations.
Chris, I am gonna make sure that you grow up to be a success.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a success! Would you excuse me for a moment?
Chris shows great enthusiasm, but there's just one problem. He doesn't know what the word success means. Dummy point number 1. To solve this conundrum, he runs into the kitchen and asks the toaster to define success, believing it to be a computer. Dummy point number 2. And just when you thought you couldn't facepalm any harder, in comes Peter to inquire about the computer that Chris is using. You know what? We honestly don't know how these men function in day-to-day life.
Computer, what does success mean?
Chris, let me know when you're done with the computer.
Number 5, wrestling a lamp. Family Guy really fluctuates on Peter's stupidity.
Thanks for letting me use the phone.
Thanks for Spaceballs.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's just as dumb as Chris and, thinks the toaster is a computer. Other times he seems to be a little sharper and can therefore manipulate Chris into doing some unbelievably stupid things. In When You Wish Upon a Weinstein, Peter demonstrates Chris's foolishness by smacking him in the back and telling him that the lamp did it.
The kid's not exactly an honor roll student. Watch. Hey, he did it.
Naturally, Chris tackles the lamp and wrestles with it, fully believing that this inanimate object did, in fact, smack him in the back. We have no words. This is just beyond dumb. So dumb that even Peter recognizes it as such.
I have faith that Chris will grow up to be a real mensch.
Number 4, Scooby Dubious.
Who said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself"?
We have nothing to fear but fear itself. It's a pretty popular quote, and even if you didn't know that it was attributed to Franklin D. Roosevelt, you surely knew that it did not come from Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo?
While testing Chris for a quiz, Stewie asks him to ascribe the aforementioned quote. Chris believes that it came from the aforementioned animated dog who solves mysteries with his friends.
Shaggy?
It's nobody on Scooby-Doo.
When Stewie shoots that down, Chris changes his answer to Shaggy, because of course he does. We get not knowing the specifics behind certain quotes or historical moments, but attributing such a fantastic and iconic quote to a cartoon dog, let alone one who's famously cowardly, well, that's almost impressively dumb. Number 3, fur fish.
Hey, Chris, I wanted to talk about what happened at school. Is that a dead gerbil in there?
It would seem that Chris really can't wrap his head around fish. If he's not being robbed by a goldfish, he's putting a live gerbil in a fish tank. It goes about as well as you would expect. Upon entering Chris's room, Stewie notices a dead gerbil in the fish tank.
That's a fur fish. It's a weird species. You put them in there and they swim like hell for like 30 seconds and then they go to sleep.
Chris then states that it is not a dead gerbil, but a fur fish, a type of fish that ferociously swims for 30 seconds before going to sleep. So, not only is Chris stupid enough to believe that, but he also caused the death of an animal and is now keeping it in his fish tank.
Get up, lazy!
Confused though Chris might be, if that's not a sign of a budding problematic personality, we don't know what is. Number 2, not recognizing Peter.
My name is Chris, and I like candy and jumping on colorful birds.
Wow! What else do I like?
Now, Chris has done some really stupid things in his time, but this is on a whole other level. Upon being ordered by Peter to shoot friends, Chris hesitates because he doesn't know which one his real dad is.
Quick, shoot him, Chris! What are you waiting for?
How do I know which one to shoot?
What?
It's a parody of various science fiction stories involving this situation, but Peter correctly points out that they don't even look the same. You know, one being Peter and the other being an old man with a German accent.
All right, when's my birthday?
Ah, crap.
February 8th.
Ah!
Dad!
Things go even more off the rails when Chris shoots Peter and embraces friends, believing him to be his real father. Even babies recognize their own parents. So are we confirming that Chris is literally dumber than a baby?
You idiot!
Well, learn my birthday, asshole!
Chris is special, isn't he? If special is a euphemism for too dumb to live in this case. Anyway, what do you think Chris's dumbest moment is? Actually, I'll give you a clue. It's less one moment and more a series of consistent stupidity. Anyway, let's check out these honorable or dishonorable mentions, and then we'll find out what it is.
Whoa, boy, that Red Bull's some strong stuff!
I'm sorry, that one must have accidentally gotten in with the rest of them.
What are you saying, that I'm too stupid for it?
Chris, we're over here.
What are you saying, that I'm too stupid for it? And I just wanted to say, 나는 당신을 내가 만난 가장 아름다운 여자라고 생각해.
What language is that?
You're Korean, are you not?
No, I'm Mexican.
잘됐어.
Television. How pathetic.
Yeah, you know where the most interesting stuff is, Dad? The human hat.
Number 1, not recognizing Herbert's intent.
I ran away from home. Do you mind if I live with you?
Live with me? My goodness, I feel like I'm gonna pinch myself to see if I'm dreaming.
Herbert was introduced in the season 3 episode To Love and Die in Dixie, and his advances towards Chris were quite obvious from the outset. They've gotten even clearer in recent seasons, like when Herbert asked Chris to bathe him, yet Chris still remains ignorant.
But I can't wash myself. Know anybody with a pair of strong young hands to help me in and out of the tub? Oh, rats!
Well, there was that one time he asked Herbert outright, but that was more of a joke than legitimate character development, so we're not counting it.
Are you a pedophile?
It's not like Herbert's advances are particularly subtle either, so we're surprised Chris hasn't caught on.
Mr. Herbert, what's life really all about?
Well, I suppose it's about trying new things, sampling the sweet and the savory.
Then again, this is the boy who mistook an old German man for his father, so maybe we're not so surprised after all.
But don't you think it's scary to try new things?
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.